But yes, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have this conversation going. I think it's LACUNY's like paramount job to really boast and boost up our colleagues after they receive awards or going up for different candidacies. And I think this just really exemplifies the community that CUNY is for everybody, especially within librarians, that we're here to support each other and make sure that if someone comes around and like is awarded such a thing like this, people are talked about, they get the recognition they deserve. And I think Professor Gibbons is one of many that deserve that kind of recognition. So without further ado, let's get this conversation started, all right? So the way this is gonna work is more of like Nelson and I are gonna go back and forth, asking questions to Professor Gibbons, and eventually it'll be morphing into kind of like a conversation between the three of us as we discuss our backgrounds and like anything that is pertinent within the subject matter that we're talking about. All right, so I'll start it up. So when many colleagues hear the name William Gibbons, they immediately think about a faculty librarian at City College of New York who's super active and very integrated into Harlem community. But however, can you please talk a bit about your background, your family history in the South and so forth? Feel free to expand on that as much as you want, Will.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Jeff, for putting this conversation together. I really appreciate it. And I'm humbled by this. I'm also very, very, I'm a shy person, if you guys can believe that. So, I'm from Detroit. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And I've lived in New York City since 1991. And it was a sad day that I had lived in New York longer than I've lived in Detroit. And so I'm from Detroit and I'm of New York. And when I made the decision to come to New York, Harlem was the place that I wanted to be. And that was because, I wanted to walk the streets that some of our artists, entertainers, activists, and politicians have walked those same streets. I wanted to feel and understand what Harlem was and study its past and study its history. So I've always been passionate about Harlem. My parents are from Kentucky. Now, I don't know how many people know people from Kentucky, but my mother's from Kentucky and my father's from Georgia. And, they met in Detroit, and so in Detroit, Detroit's an interesting city, growing up. And this is what's really interesting. Many people know about Detroit, it's the only American city that went bankrupt, right? Mm-hmm. But as a kid growing up, right, Detroit was a city that was 99% people of African descent. So as a kid growing up, I thought the world, I thought the United States, I thought Black folk ran everything, because in Detroit, the politicians, the businessmen, the clergy were all people of color. So I grew up seeing those people in professional settings. But at the same time, Detroit in the 80s, as well as Washington, D.C., was the murder capital of America in the 1980s. So you have that contrast. So I moved to New York so that I can learn and study urban planning. So I have a degree in urban policy. And my idea was to learn how to improve, understand cities, how to fix cities. And I came to New York to study at the New School for Social Research. And I was planning on going back to Detroit, but I didn't make it.
Oh, I love it, man. Thank you for sharing so much. Like, it's almost like it's strange to think that you know, I mean, I'm native New Yorker. I was born and raised here. So like, it's like, I hear that when you say like, you know, everyone around me was, you know, people of color. Like I grew up in Jackson Heights and everyone around me was like, you know, Latino, and I understood that scenario. When I'm moving to another place, like in Long Island, it was almost like a culture shock. Like, oh, there are other people around me that don't speak Spanish, that don't understand that Christmas time is a very important time, like for just family and cultural stuff. But I'm gonna pass it over to Nelson. Go ahead for the next question. Thank you so much, Will.
And let me say this though, let me say this, Jeff.
Sure.
What was cool when I moved to New York was that when I saw brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, I thought they were brothers and sisters like me, from just regular folks. Because in the Midwest, you don't have the cultural diversity. So when I see Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and people from the Bahamas and Trinidadians and Jamaicans, until they open their mouth, they look like me. And that was what was really cool. And that was Jeff, that was my cultural shock, yeah. You know? And so, you know, it's cool, man, being on the East Coast, you know, being from New York.
This is great. Wow. I mean, I've known you since we met in 2007. So I've seen the man in action, you know, all these years. And, you know, you're, again, the more recent, one of the 10 2022 I Love My Librarian awardees. But can you share with us, how did you get into librarianship and the archival profession? What made you pursue this career path? And how did you arrive to CUNY and the City College of New York?
Well, you know, all of us have a story. And I would like to meet the person who knew in high school or undergrad that they wanted to be a librarian or perhaps an archivist. I would like to meet that person, because many of us have that story about how we arrived, you know, into librarianship. And so how I arrived in librarianship was by happenstance, you know, and that was a beautiful thing. So I'm working for a youth agency called Manhattan Valley, and Manhattan Valley was located in the St. John the Divine on 110th Street. And that Manhattan Youth Agency was a consultant for the Cosby Show. The guy who founded it was a teenage father in the 70s. His name was John Bess. And I went to work there, and I was doing, because I had a master's degree, social work, case management, helping teenage mothers and fathers, right? It was the Teenage Service Act, and they were funded to go and get these young folks who were teenage parents the services that they needed, help them get back in school, GED programs, public assistance. I mean, I did all of this, and I didn't go to school for that, but somehow that's where I ended up. And you know, I'm a spiritual person, so I just went in that direction. I believe to this day, that's where I was supposed to be, versus as a private consultant or working for the city of New York, or even going back to Detroit. But as I was doing this job, I wanted more. I wanted to write. I wanted to do research. I wanted to continue to do some of the things that I had came out here to do. So my office was in Mount Morris Park, Marcus Garvey Park. And every day I would go to lunch and sit in the library. And I met the branch librarian of the New York Public Library, the Harlem branch of the New York Public Library. And I just told him that I just wanted to write and research, and that's all I wanted to do. And he said, well, why don't you become a librarian? You know, artists and entertainers wait tables as they're trying to be writers, as they're trying to be actors. If you're trying to be a writer, why don't you work in a library? And with a blink of an eye, I said, that sounds good. I can do a job, get paid, and be around books and research all day. Not thinking that I had to go get another master's degree. So they said, you know, you have to go get a master's degree. I was blessed and fortunate. The New York Public Library in the 90s had a program, a library trainee program, where they paid 80% of your tuition to go to library school to get your master's. And so it was between Pratt and Queens. And because, you know, Pratt's in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn, and Queens is a plane, a train, and a boat. No offense to my colleagues in Queens, you know, I went to Pratt, and you know, the New York Public Library picked up the tab, so it was expensive. I mean, you know, Pratt in the '90s was still expensive. It's even more expensive today, and you know, I was blessed again and fortunate. When I got out of library school, I didn't know a dime, you know, because they had pretty much picked up the tab. And that's where my foundation began, as a children's librarian. So if people ask me today who I am, sometimes if I want to be cool and smooth, I'll tell them I'm an archivist, you know, but I'm really a children's librarian to heart. I'm a professional storyteller. You know, I've competed in storytelling festivals. I learned the art. I learned the art of librarianship from librarians in the 60s and 70s, who at break time for 15 minutes had tea, white tablecloths, and put on white gloves. They told me three things. Never come to work without a collar. One day I was hanging out all night. And you guys got to remember, I've been a librarian for 27 years. And I'm relatively young. I'm in my early 50s. So I was a librarian when I was 22 years old, 23 years old. And so I was enjoying life. So I came to work without a collar. And the librarians pulled me to the side and says, don't ever come to work again without a collar. Always keep $20 in your pocket in case a colleague asks you to go to lunch. Imagine if your colleagues asked you to go to lunch and you told them you couldn't and gave them some excuse. They might think differently. So they said to me, keep 20 bucks in your pocket in case someone invites you to lunch. So that really helped give me a foundation. The other thing is, when you're helping patrons, try your best not to point. Over there, over there. So those were the foundational lessons that they gave me. And then I had never been to a Broadway play. And the people there that I worked with took me to a Broadway play to expose me. You know, a 23-year-old kid from New York who hasn't, you know, just never thought about Broadway and never thought about the theater. They wanted to expose me to that part of the culture. And so I'm internally grateful for those who gave me my foundation to help me become the librarian that I am today. And then, you know, I did 9 years at the New York Public Library, you know, from working in all of the branches. I worked in every branch from 59th Street all the way up to Inwood, every one of them. I visited every elementary and public school. My job there was to connect libraries and schools. So every day I would grab and I would go into the public schools, the Catholic schools, and get young people excited about books, give them library cards, clear their library files. And then in the afternoon, they would come to the library and see me in one of those branches. And then I would do programming in those libraries, whether I showed films or brought authors in, or just had all kinds of activities for the children and the young adult librarians. And then finally I went to Schaumburg and did a couple of years at the Schaumburg Center before coming to City College 16 years ago.
Before Jeffrey asked this question, I just want to make a quick note, because you reminded me of something. You know, there's just something special about the air at City College. You mentioned your personal experience, and when I was in high school, I used to write poetry as well. I used to do creative writing, and I even forgot about this at one point. But I participated in the Langston Hughes Festival, you know, as a high school student, or at least I attended, and I forgot about this. And it wasn't until years later, after, you know, I graduated Baruch, whatever, started working, you know, got my full-time job, and I'm like, yeah, but this is the college where I went to. I did go to the Langston Hughes Festival, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it's amazing. It's like you sort of gravitate toward certain places, you meet these mentors. It's just amazing the way that life what happens to you as a result and the positivity that you attract throughout your life. I'm gonna now pass it on to Jeffrey.
Hey, Nelson. So I'm gonna go. So we have the Langston Hughes Festival archive, and I'm going to go in there and dig and see if I can find something, some evidence of your contribution to the Langston. It could be a photo, it could be an audio, video, or it perhaps could be maybe some poetry you wrote, man. So I'm gonna, I dig. But I did, by the way, guys, I did go to Queens College to get my certificate in archival management. So I did take that boat, that plane, and that train to Queens College. So that's how I know what it's like. I after work, I would get on that train and go out to Queens College, and I feel for some of my colleagues today who are going to Queens College and they haven't been on the campus yet, and they've been in the program for a couple of years. So I don't know, that it could be bittersweet, traveling out there versus doing remote, but it was a good experience going out to Queens College.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm a QC grad myself. I went great years, and it's like it's really funny that that when you resonate, I think everybody here can resonate with the fact that like not everyone dreamed of being a librarian in high school, or like thought about like I'm going to be an archivist in like 10th grade. Like it's something that for me personally, I met a librarian, and just him being able to give me answers when I just asked questions really like got me to even investigate in any kind of librarianship. But anyway, we're going on to the next question.
But you know what, Jeff?
Yeah.
People think librarians are smart. I tell people all the time, we're not great smart people. We just know where the answers are, and we can find. If you ask us a question, we can get you the answer. So
absolutely, yeah. People like to think that we know everything, but really we just know how to find everything. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, but can you tell us currently, like, what work are you like currently working on? Like, just so for those who are unfamiliar with what you do at City College, and like where your focus is within librarianship and academia.
So, one of the things, I've got so many thoughts and ambitions and initiatives. One is to just the main thing is to preserve print books. Fortunately, I've come across a couple of baby boomers who are retiring or who have passed, and their private book collections have come into my hands. And it's really inspired me to see books from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, hardcover books that I had, with subject matters that I had never thought were written about, or in the complexities that they were written about. And so they're out of print. And so what do we do with these books? Do we keep them together as collections? Do we, what we have in our collection, what do we do with the other books? Do we put them on book sale? And so for integrity as an archivist, it's my idea is to have these private book collections that are coming in, and keeping them as memorialized collections that give us a preview into the minds of these scholars. William Lawrence Katz is a prolific author of the African-American experience, and he wrote many books for young adults in the 60s and 70s. You've got Dr. John Henry Clark, who was a professor at Hunter College, Cornell. Cornell's library is named after him, acquiring his private book collection. And one of our colleagues at City College, Professor Herb Boyd. And people are just calling me, a lot of it's coming in through Schomburg, and people are finding my name or through Black Studies. And it's really hard to turn, you know, these collections away. And so, you know, we'll see moving forward, but it's preserving the print book. You know, I have a colleague who has done a magnificent job of looking at our juvenile and children's collection, young adult collection. And, you know, we need to do more as it relates to weeding and getting books in and materials in that just have so much value. And so, you know, that's one initiative. The other one is from an academia side and from a community side is to help people become homeowners, to create affordable home ownership opportunities. I'm real interested in gentrification. And that's my urban policy background. I have an archive called the Harlem Development Archive. And I'm real interested on how to create home ownership opportunities. You know, in Michigan and Detroit, everyone is a homeowner. There's 95% of people are homeowners. And so when I moved to New York, it was weird that most people are not homeowners. And so, you know, just understanding how neighborhoods and communities are changing. And that's what got me involved in the Harlem community. I'm a Harlem Little League baseball coach. And so just trying to bridge and connect libraries, schools, and the community is something that I'm interested in. I'm interested in, you know, from a librarianship side, is to create knowledgeable library users, to help people see the value in libraries. You know, what's happening now is that people seem to think that you can get everything online. You don't need to come to libraries. And we need to really talk about, you know, our circulation numbers have drastically changed before COVID. You know, we need to talk about how reference was changing before COVID. And we can clearly see now how reference has changed during COVID. And so in a post-COVID environment, what is that going to look like? So when you look at the landscape of all of our campuses, how do we reimagine ourselves, you know, as library spaces, as well as librarians and librarianship? So those are the things that I'm real interested in, you know, reimagining, repurposing library space. Yeah. And you know, I defer to all of us, you know, to think about, you know, how to, because we're in a unique position here. And I think if we begin, and Jeff and Nelson as vice president and president, think about how we can really begin to work together. Because, you know, I'm grateful for you guys doing this conversation. Many people don't know who I am. I've been around for a long time. There are people in CUNY and the libraries that have been around longer than me, and I don't know who they are. And so, you know, we all need to go to each other's campuses. I mean, Nelson, you got a beautiful campus over there. You got the old NYU campus going on over there. You know, new space. Brooklyn has a new library and a new building. It's a few years old, but you know, and some of us, you know, have libraries that can be in the sitcom Seinfeld from the 80s. So, you know, we need to think together collectively, diversify our collections, and really, you know, begin to almost think, and people might not like this, think as one, you know, think as one with our own unique, you know, spaces and collections.
Hear that. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much, Will. That is actually a really good transition into the next question. So feel free, Nelson, to unmute and go for it.
Sure, thank you. No, I mean, from this last response, William, you gave us just so much how it's important to build partnerships, etc., working together. I mean, you know, and just partnering. You know, the home ownership and how that was just huge for you, you know, where you noted that in Detroit, people were mostly homeowners, and here in New York, they're not, you know. Similarly, you know, sometimes we have our students here in the CUNY system, or even the faculty, the staff, they're unaware of perks that are out there, right? Like financial literacy. And there are people that aren't aware that we have access to a Roth 401k, et cetera, and just all these different items and within the CUNY system. So yes, we do need to build partnerships with not just quote unquote typical library partners within, the other academic departments, but also outside of it, maybe the banks, people who are financial literate, et cetera. But I won't, go any further into that. But so the next question is, you are the second librarian at the City College of New York to be awarded the I Love My Librarian Award, with Professor Seamus O'Scanlan having received the honor in 2009. So, there's obviously something in the air at City College, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the I Love My Librarian Award and how it feels to be a recipient?
Well, listen. So I'm humbled. I'm blessed, and I hope that I am one of many more to get the award. I'm looking forward to someone next year within CUNY being nominated and receiving the award. It's humbling, but then it's also, balance, right? Because I've been doing some fantastic things. I do fantastic things. I never talk about them. I don't even think about them. I just do them, right? So, and my work in the community, my work with at City College, and my work at City College is not just in the library. I partner with other academic departments, and my impact on students. And I don't have, time to think of all the things that I do. But then when you take a moment and you say to yourself, do I deserve this? Because you're nominated, and so the balance comes in where, things in your professional career kind of don't go the way you want them to go, and what happens is you get balance, and you get confirmation that you are doing a good job, and you can inspire other people, and people can look up to you to an extent, and so I think that's where the balance comes in, and to be honest, I didn't really know this award existed. I did not. Every organization has an award that they give out. I didn't know it was I Love My Librarian Award, and I didn't see it. I've never seen it pop up in the emails or anything. I might have missed it. I missed a lot of things. And so when I got the phone call from the president of ALA, they had been trying to get a hold of me. Now, since we work from home and so forth, they called me at my office, and then they finally got a hold of someone in the archives, and then I got back to them. By the time we connected, it was after Christmas, and I'm walking down the street and I'm talking to the people from ALA, and I'm floored, and it's really, really humbling, but it's nice. It's nice to be recognized, for your hard work, and 27 years, is a lot of amazing things that I've done that I haven't really even thought about as I do them, even to this day. I don't have time to think about patting myself on the back for, helping students. One of my colleagues had to put up a sign in our office that says, William Gibbons' office is back there, and if you don't see him, or if you see him, leave a message. So many people were coming looking for me, and that's just because I try to engage them. I try to help them. And so, yeah. So, and there's going to be someone else that can, I'm not the last, definitely not the last to receive this award. We're going to keep this thing going. That's for sure.
That is awesome. So just to quick follow-up, and I know this came as a shock to you, it came out of,
Nowhere.
but so two questions. And one, the first one, you may not want, you don't have to give names or anything, but I guess number one, do you know who the letter writers are? And number two, what advice would you give to anyone interested in having their work acknowledged in this manner?
So immediately when I got off the phone with ALA, I thought, who did this? Who nominated? And I was right. I was nominated by two people. And one person is a physician, not affiliated with CUNY. He's just a friend. We coach Little League baseball together. And, baseball is an interesting sport. You got a lot of downtime. So while we're working with the young kids, we're talking about life. And, we're just talking about a lot of things. And so, I've been, they've been pushing me to be on Harlem Little League board. But you know what I tell them? I want to be president of Harlem Little League baseball. And so just all of my work within the community, connecting these young people. So when I'm talking to these young people on the baseball field, I'm not talking to them about baseball. I'm asking them what their favorite subject is and how was school this week, and those kind of things. It's a beautiful thing, man, working with, 10 and 11-year-olds and 7-year-olds on a baseball field on a Saturday afternoon, yelling at them. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. And so he nominated. And then there is someone within CUNY that nominated me. And I just guessed, and because, you know the people sometimes who show you love, and I tell you another thing, Nelson, I can't remember the other question you asked me, but good things happen to good people. And the Lord don't like ugliness. So when people are ugly, good things don't happen for those people. And so, I know I'm a good person because, I have no ill will towards anyone. I'm not mean spirited. And mostly what I do every day and all day is help people. That's the one thing that I do, Nelson. Every day I reflect on how did I help someone today? Because when you've been doing this for so long, and I tell you, it's as easy as putting a book in someone's hand. Some people get mad at me in the library because I tell them I'm going to teach you how to find a call number in a book versus doing it for them. You see? So when they complain and then they do it and they go find a book, I'm going to tell you, finding a book on a shelf, that's why we got to keep these print books. Finding a book on the shelf is one of the most powerful and uplifting things. When you have millions of books in a space, but you can find exactly your book on the shelf on your own, that is a skill set for life. So when I go home and I reflect on, did I help someone today by putting a book in their hand or teaching them how to use the library? That, that's a good thing. And so just good things happen to good people, and the Lord just doesn't like ugliness. So, that's, if that answers the question. I forgot the question.
No, thank you. No, you literally, you answered both questions, you answered them. So thank you so much for your response and just sharing, these tidbits about yourself that, again, I've known you again since 2007, and I'm just learning new things as we're speaking. So I will now turn it over to Jeffrey so he can continue. Oh, and again, if folks have questions, please feel free to type them on the chat box or email them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Will. All right, so we're gonna start in like a different arc, quote unquote, in these conversations. And I'm curious, you know, how does it feel like navigating academia, librarianship, and archives as a person of color? You know, what would you deem as like one of your you know, biggest triumphs, and conversely biggest shortcomings? You know, feel free to expand on that in any way you want.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you guys something. I try not to think about race. You know, and really race is a constructed thing. You know, color, race, and all that's a constructed thing. I know it exists. I know that you know, I'm stereotyped. You know, I've experienced it all. You know, in Detroit. You know, with police and being harassed and being profiled here and walking in a department store and having people clutch their purse. You know, but I feel for them more than thinking about how I feel and you know, but as it relates to now I don't want to forget some things, but as relates to my work, you know, my work, and you asked me about my academic interest. It's really about the evidence of things unseen. And from an archival perspective, there's so much evidence out there that is unseen. And, you know, what I'm focused on is indexing and cataloging the African-American experience. So pretty much all of my work and interest is on uncovering that in evidence, indexing it and cataloging it, you know, for its historical value. There was a man named Ernest Kinzer who worked at the Schomburg Center in the 60s and 70s. And he has the Kaiser Index, and he indexed all of the holdings at that point at the Schomburg Center. And so as librarians, we know the value of indexes, not necessarily just bibliographies, but indexing, so that when you index things, you know where they are, you know that they exist, and the idea is to be able to put our hands on. And so my work is inspired by uncovering the things that are unseen because they are ignored, they are thrown away. They, you know, are not being undiscovered and promoted by our community, librarianship, and archivists, you know, who swore to uphold making things available. And so, you know, that's a big piece of what I do. You know, I've got 3 or 4 archival collections that I oversee. And, you know, I teach an archival course called The Evidence of Things Unseen. And that was inspired by James Baldwin's book, The Evidence of Things Not Seen, when he went to Atlanta to investigate the Atlanta child murders in the 80s and saw that all the evidence did not point to Wayne Williams, you know, but people refused to see the evidence. So the real evidence was unseen. And that inspired me to develop this course that I teach at the Schomburg and at City College. But I will say this, in that what's disappointing is that in my 27 years, I've only seen one male of color at the Chief of Counsel's table. And that was the university dean librarian. His name was just right there, and it just, you know, slipped off my tongue.
I'm sorry, Curtis
Kendrick. Thank you, Curtis Kendrick. And so the 16, 17 years that I've been at City, these colleges, right, and these provosts, I'm going to put it on the provosts, have not hired men of color, right? And there's only been a few women of African descent that have been at the chief of counsel's table. That is disappointing. And, when we see, all of this now after George Floyd and inclusion, diversity, and equity, people are having these conversations and so forth. I'm optimistic. And one of the reasons why I'm optimistic of all this attention, just like all the attention came to Black folk in the 70s after civil rights, after George Floyd, we see a lot of programming and a lot of conversations. But we saw during the civil rights movement, in the 70s, we got the attention, and everything in the 80s got rolled back. Not only did things in the 80s get rolled back, our communities were over flooded with guns and drugs. So when we look at this moment in this decade, right, after George Floyd, what's happening following that, with diversity, equity, inclusion? And is it really going to matter? I think really what's important is for people of color to begin to think about a plan and a strategy for how to move forward and not rely on others to help and create that program, policy, platform. I think that's what's really key moving forward. Because if we just rely on the government and institutions, we see what happened from the 70s to the 80s when everything got rolled back, And so where I'm from, it makes no sense that the auto industry that employed and created a strong middle class. That's what I forgot to tell you guys about growing up in Detroit. All of us had nice cars, Cadillacs, beautiful cars, beautiful homes, went on vacation because we all worked in the factories. And then all of a sudden, the auto industry, the American auto industry just began to crumble. And you have to really look at that and question, we let foreign competitors come in and take our market share. Auto industry's turned upside down. You've got the auto industry, which supplies all the cars pretty much in America at one point, and you've got Motown. But then over 20 years later, the city is bankrupt. So you look at that moment, and now you look at what's happening now. And so looking at all these conversations in diversity and equity, I'm optimistic, or pessimistic, that I don't see, unless we begin to create our own path and our own approach to uplift. And so I'll close with, one of my things is to help uplift the young people, change the schools. I want to talk to Eric Adams because, I have the blueprint and the solution as a librarian, because you cannot have a school without a library. It's impossible. So I know how to get the kids focused on literacy and academics and athletics, academics, and literacy. So I hope that answers the question.
I love it though. Thank you so much, Will. That was a really, inspired answer. I feel good about it at this point. But I think we're at the point where we are going to shift over to questions from the chat. So Nelson, I know you got a big queue growing on your end, so feel free to launch them at Professor Gibbons.
Yes, there are quite a few questions. Just quick note, there's one from someone named Nelson Santana. That's not me. So if you can type in your chat, the question is what motivates you? Please let me know, and then I'll address your name. But let's go first with, in order, Professor AJ Patek. His question is, getting second master's degree is an impediment to many, and given many institutions across the US do not require a second master's degree to work in the libraries, do you think CUNY should think about its requirements for librarians?
So there are, like Columbia, the librarians are not faculty, they're staff. And so I've been fortunate to be part of two very good unions. The New York Public Library had a very good library union, and PSC-CUNY, which has fought hard for librarians to have that faculty status. You know, it's tough. It depends on what side of the fence that you sit on. Do you want that title? With that title of faculty comes that responsibility. There are some people who want to just do the library work and serve and help student, staff, and faculty, and don't worry about that academic title. And then there's others that want that title, want to do that research. Now, the thing that can happen is those who want that title forget all about what they got into the profession for, which is service, and want to do that research. So perhaps it can be an option for those who want one or the other. But, you know, if you're going to go that route, I definitely think, you know, a second master should be required to have faculty status. But I do think that people should have the option. So perhaps we could have in our departments, you know, all of us are librarians, some of us are faculty status and some of us don't have faculty status, if that's what the collective body wants, you know. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. The next question comes from Professor Emma Antibanez-Kutsi. Oh, by the way, AJ is at Hunter College, if I'm not mistaken, and Emma is actually, Professor Emma Antibanez-Kutsi is at Bronx Community College. So here is her question. Can you speak more about diversifying our collections? How can libraries and archives move in that direction with better intention?
I think we have to be mindful and conscious and work hard at collection development. You know, I wonder on the totem pole, where is collection development? You know, it's our service. It's our, well, first it's probably our scholarship so we can get tenure. Then it's our teaching, our service, and then, you know, collection development, you know, comes, you know, perhaps, you know, fourth. The other thing is that to have these robust and diverse in collections, you know how you forget your train of thought? We have to, dang, you know, I had that really good point and I was just adding that other adjective and then it lost. It'll come back to me. Oh, we have to weed. That's what it was. And I guess maybe that's why I put out of my mind, because, you know, perhaps some of us don't like to weed. And so if you think about, we've been around for a long time and we have a lot of stuff on our shelves that collect a lot of dust and haven't been used. So in order to bring in the new stuff, we have to weed. Then we have to be conscious of and mindful of and prioritize collection development. And then I think we need to look at new ways in which, instead of having these same old vendors, you know, I think we have to look at, you know, dealing with our purchases and being able to go out and easily purchase materials. And I think we need to really, you know, City College has some good historical collections, but I think we need to we need to create, how about this? We need to create a lifetime reading program. We need to have all of the books that we need to help us be better humanists and to preserve our democracy. All of those books. And then we need to curate those books. So when we talked about earlier about my interest in getting all these private book collections, I want to curate these books. And so when I teach credit courses, I'm asking each student to read 3 books a semester and analyze it, break it down, synthesize it, and interpret it, and index and catalog it, the information. Because if you want to hide something from somebody, you put it in a book on page 115 out of 300 pages. You hide it right in the middle. So there's where that evidence of things unseen comes in. So we need to have a lifetime reading plan. We need to have all the classic books and books moving forward that help preserve democracy, as well as help us be better humanists and people in society. But it's going to be, we have to be mindful, and we have to be conscious, and we have to improve our ability to purchase outside of contemporary vendors somehow.
Awesome, great answer, Will. I'd even add to that, just to be mindful of the community we serve within our own libraries. Like if we are serving a specific community, to be mindful of that community and create a collection development around it. Okay, I have another question from the chat from a Nelson Santana, not the Nelson Santana. So the question is, what motivates you to succeed, and how do you motivate other success in others? Do you want to ask it, or do you, oh, sorry, that's the question, sorry. What motivates you to succeed, and how do you motivate other success in others? Sorry.
So there was a point in my life when I was embarrassed. And when I overcame that embarrassment, I thrived. That was the moment when I can tell everyone who saw it and who knew it that my mother was an alcoholic. As a 10-year-old, 12, 15-year-old kid in high school and all that, when people saw that my mother was inebriated, it was embarrassing. And I said, oh, she's not feeling well. She's sick. She's not well. And so I'm in high school. I'm in Detroit. I'm in the murder capital of the world. And I had no supervision because my mother, couldn't no longer supervise me. So I come from a grandfather who was a Baptist preacher. I didn't want to disappoint him. And my father, who still lives in the 70s, was a cool dude that drove Cadillacs and Lincolns and all that. And I just knew that education was a way for me to do 2 things: to succeed in life, but to also be able to move out of my home, because I desperately wanted to do that, not realizing that I didn't need to do that. But so, I buckled down in high school, sophomore year. Freshman was a disaster. Freshman year was a disaster. But sophomore, junior, and senior year were really good years. And I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Michigan. And I didn't realize that the University of Michigan was the Ivy League of the Midwest. And I was wondering why so many New York license plates were in Ann Arbor in Michigan. And that was because they couldn't get into the Ivy League schools. In Michigan, Ann Arbor is close. It's only like 8-9 hours away, so you could drive. So so that's what drove me to succeed, just my environment, and I began to thrive when that veil was lifted, when that weight was lifted, that I could stand and say, yeah, my mother's an alcoholic and my mother's got problems. And because, and so that's why I go back, Jeff and Nelson, to the point where you're a good person. I'm a good person because I don't lie. It's harder to lie than not lie, because when you lie, you got to remember what you said. And that takes a lot of effort. So when I deal with people, I'm telling you straight up now, there's a lot of people who don't like me or who may not like me, because I speak from the heart and passion. I'm passionate, right? And because, you know, I don't come to work. I don't even have a job anymore, because what I do is not a job. Because understand, when I go back and I'm helping young adults and children, and I could see when I was in the Harlem community back then at 23 years old, that there were kids struggling in their home. And I understood that. And I gave as much as I could. And I talked to them in a way that I knew what was going on in their environment. And I can talk to anyone, you know, so I can help people whose mothers should never die because they give life. Why should someone who gives life lose a life? So when my mother passed, she passed in a way that no one should pass. She passed alone. And she passed alone in her home for a few days, maybe longer. And so when people lose a loved one, I am able to help them with words of encouragement that my grandmother, because you remember, I'm from a Baptist preacher, my grandfather was a Baptist preacher, to help understand passing. And the thing is that the Lord doesn't make mistakes. So when he taps you on your shoulder and tell you, come on, he needs you. And so no matter how my mother passed or how my mother's life was, that's the way the Lord wanted it. And when he called, because her passing has now enabled me to help people. My mother's life has allowed me to help people. And I think that's why I do the job that I do so well. And that's why I don't have the time to think about what I'm actually doing, because there's so much to be done. And then that's the balance that comes in and says, you know, wow, it's nice after 27 years to be recognized for something. And then how it was done. You guys asked me the people who nominated me. And you know, it's humbling, you know, for two separate people who don't know each other relatively, and one not involved in, so it was, just my life experiences, and I bring my life experiences, and I'm able to understand what our students are struggling with, abuse or addiction, and then not having supervision, struggling in school. I struggled in school, in middle school, and I struggled a lot because I just didn't have a normal childhood growing up, and the grace of God, got me to Michigan, got me to the new school, got me to Pratt. So I feel that if I do everything I can to help people, then my mother's situation was a purpose. So my mother was not born, drank, had me, and died. No. Her life was more than that. Her life was to give me the ability and the insight and the compassion and the love to help others. And so I found my home when I became a librarian at a very young moment, and understood how I can impact and help people. And so I'm just passionate about what I do. And like I say, I don't look at any of this as work, and job. I don't look at this as a job. And you want to know something that's real interesting? I've only had 2 jobs in the last 27 years. So I'm truly, truly blessed. And hey, I can retire with a full pension in 3 years. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
know,
I honestly
I
thank
ain't
you.
rubbing it in. I ain't rubbing it in. But you know, that's just the Lord, man. You know, that's you know, because I could have, I could have left the libraries a long time ago and went to private sector, and done other things. But, and I tell you this, I met my wife in the library. So that's why I don't, because we don't make much money, but I know that this is where I'm supposed to be because I met my wife in the library and I got 3 kids, and so we talk about home ownership, Nelson, right? I'm gonna let you get to some other questions. We got time. Home ownership. I was fortunate enough to buy a brownstone in Harlem 16 years ago, just because I'm walking down the street in the Harlem community and I see all of these signs talking about home ownership, home ownership, home ownership. And so, I was, and so I that's why I built the archive, and that's why I'm trying to create other home ownership opportunities for other people. When I teach a course on Harlem and gentrification, and that course, helps, it's a credit course at City, but I'm also helping them think about home ownership and talking to them about life. So I hope that answers the question.
No, I definitely did. I hope so, at least. And thank you for sharing such a moving story. I think everybody here is better for hearing it. And I feel personally inspired by your story and want to strive to be a librarian just like you. So.
Oh man, come on, man. I want to be like you guys, man. Listen, I would, who the last, person of color that I remember is your colleague, Nelson. What's his name?
Dr. Leroy Lawton, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that was the last time I was involved with LACUNY. And look, man, you guys is president, man, vice president. I want to be like you guys, man. I want to be president.
You're too kind. You're
too kind, man. But anyway, so I am aware of the time, and thank you to everybody here who has joined us in this conversation with Professor Gibbons. Let's give a warm virtual reaction round of applause for him and his time. It's been so great for everybody here. And Nelson, any final words before we break? What do you think?
No, just thank you all for joining us. Obviously, thank you to LACUNY for sponsoring the event in collaboration with Bronx Community College and the Kingsborough Community College Library, KB Library. And it was amazing. Thank you all for joining us. You made this truly a very special moment for us all.